In Norfolk Superior Court, the tension was palpable, with every eye fixed on the judge and jury. The air was thick with anticipation, as friends, family, and members of the public waited for the outcome of a case that had gripped the community for months. The jury, having spent countless hours reviewing evidence and listening to emotional testimony, prepared to deliver its verdict in the highly publicized Karen Read trial. After weeks of dramatic testimony and days of intense deliberation, the jury ultimately found Karen Read not guilty of second-degree murder, manslaughter, and leaving the scene of an accident. The decision came as a shock to many who had followed the case closely. Instead, she was convicted only of operating under the influence, a far lesser charge compared to what she had faced at the start of the trial. As the verdicts were read aloud, the courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs of disbelief. The emotional reactions from those present underscored just how much was at stake. For Karen Read, the verdict meant freedom from the most serious accusations, and a wave of visible relief washed over her and her defense team. Tears and hugs followed, marking the end of a long and harrowing ordeal. But for John O'Keefe's family, the outcome was a devastating blow. They were left with unanswered questions, deep grief, and a sense of injustice that would linger long after the trial ended. The case had become a public spectacle, drawing national attention and sparking heated debates about police conduct, the reliability of forensic evidence, and the fairness of the legal process itself. The verdict marked the end of a high-profile legal battle that divided a community, leaving behind a legacy of controversy, heartbreak, and lingering questions about justice. The prosecution, led by Hank Brennan, painted Karen Read as a jealous, volatile partner whose emotions often ran high and unpredictable. They described a relationship marked by frequent arguments, tension, and unresolved issues simmering beneath the surface. According to prosecutors, her relationship with John O'Keefe was troubled and ultimately ended in tragedy, with heartbreak and anger spiraling out of control. They argued that, after a night filled with drinking and heated arguments, Read struck O'Keefe with her SUV in a fit of rage, leaving him injured and alone in a blizzard where he would not survive the freezing night. The evidence, they said, was damning. A cracked taillight on her vehicle, O'Keefe's severe injuries, and a series of voicemails that prosecutors claimed revealed her guilt and state of mind. Forensic experts took the stand, testifying that the injuries O'Keefe suffered were consistent with being struck by a moving vehicle, supporting the prosecution's narrative. The prosecution firmly dismissed any suggestions of a cover-up or alternative theories, insisting that all the evidence pointed directly and solely to Karen Read as the person responsible. They urged the jury to view the case not as a mystery, but as a clear and tragic example of domestic violence that escalated to a deadly conclusion, demanding justice for John O'Keefe. The defense, led by Alan Jackson, mounted a vigorous counter-argument to the prosecution's narrative, challenging the very foundation of the case. Jackson argued that there was no evidence of a collision at all, no damage to the car, no debris, and no physical signs at the scene to support the claim. Multiple experts took the stand, testifying that O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with being struck by a vehicle. Instead, they suggested the wounds could have resulted from a fall or blunt force trauma unrelated to a car. The defense accused police of tunnel vision, focusing too quickly on one theory and ignoring other possibilities. They pointed to mishandled evidence, lost opportunities, and even suggested a possible cover-up to protect others who were present at the party that night. They highlighted investigative missteps and drew attention to inconsistencies in witness accounts, showing how stories changed and details were unclear. Jackson argued that O'Keefe may have been injured inside the house, possibly during an altercation, and then moved outside to stage the scene, raising further doubts about the prosecution's timeline. The defense's strategy was clear: create reasonable doubt at every turn, questioning every assumption and exposing every gap in the state's case. Jackson urged the jury to scrutinize the evidence, to recognize the unanswered questions, and to resist convicting someone based on speculation or incomplete facts. In his closing, he insisted the state had failed to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, reminding the jury that their duty was to uphold justice, not to fill in the blanks left by a flawed investigation. The not guilty verdict brought an outpouring of emotion, relief for Read, heartbreak for the O'Keefe family. Outside, Read's supporters celebrated her acquittal, while the O'Keefe family left in silence. Read, tearful, maintained she had always sought justice for O'Keefe. For the DUI conviction, she received probation, alcohol treatment, and a suspended license, no jail time. The verdict closed a bitter legal chapter, vindicating Reed but leaving lasting pain for O'Keefe's loved ones. The case remains a cautionary tale about justice, doubt, and the search for truth. The jury's decision left a community divided with questions that may never be answered.